Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. This might be the most important video I do of 2023, so please stick with me. I received an email from a medical professional who provides a compelling argument that something is being covered up in China with respect to the emergence of a more lethal virus, possibly a new virus altogether. Now, before I try to disseminate all of this information, I got like 15 tabs open here, I got notes. There's a lot of stuff. I want to play you this clip by Fox News, and this is the only real media report I've heard of this idea. I know there's some rumblings, but it's definitely not at the forefront of legacy media. So let's just play this clip for you.
I think that's right, David, and part of this is the Chinese legendary use of secrecy and even deception to get ahead. It's historically part of Chinese culture. So what I'm worried about is that there's something that the Chinese know about this new COVID virus that they have, that they're covering up. They've been very sensitive about telling the press the last several days that they're in touch with the WHO. But apparently they're not really providing the WHO all the new variants. Then we have President Biden today saying that he's worried.
Okay, so they go on to take their obligatory jabs at Joe Biden. That might be the least of our concerns if what this medical professional who sent me this email, if what they're saying is true. Now, it's important that we started there because he basically sums it up. Is there something that we're not being told? Now, we are being incredibly complacent. I'm talking about our governments and our media in terms of holding China to account with respect to the numbers, because clearly there's a discrepancy between what we are seeing, okay, in China in terms of hospitals being overwhelmed, people tripping over bodies, coffins, crematoriums being lined up around the block. Clearly there is a discrepancy between what the CCP is saying with respect to the fatality numbers and what we're seeing with our own eyes, yet it doesn't appear that we're holding them to account at all. And this is all right before China embarks on their great migration, okay? Before Chinese New Year's, billions of flights are going to be taken. There's going to be a lot of traveling, so whatever is there is going to spread. Now, the theory put forward by this medical professional in this email is incredibly concerning. In fact, it gave me chills, okay, when I first read this, because it all made sense. Now, that doesn't mean I believe it 100%. It doesn't mean that you should take it to the bank 100%. I hope that somebody who has more of an epidemiological background or perhaps a science background or a medical background can come on and try to break this down and hopefully debunk it. Hopefully this is nothing, but this may well be the Black Swan event of 2023. And recall, I made this video 2 months ago, end of November, early December, when I said this could be the Black Swan event of 2023, because what was happening at the time is you had these massive protests taking place. All of the Western media was cheerleading this. All the while, I knew that what this meant was that the virus was going to spread like crazy, and nobody was paying attention to that obvious inevitability at that point in time, that if you have all of these people protesting in the streets in very, very tight groupings, large numbers, that clearly this was going to explode. Sure enough, it has. Hundreds of millions of people now have this virus, and it's very likely that some estimates put the death count between 1 million and even as high as up to 20 million. Now, if this new strain, whatever it is, that's causing this white lung issue, if that's has an even higher fatality rate, then this could be incredibly problematic. One of the reasons why it's going to be so problematic is because there's going to be a lot of resistance to any sort of measures that are imposed by the government, because the government blew its load too quickly with respect to its overreach with respect to this issue. Everybody, is pretty much fed up with all of the restrictions. So now if something actually serious, and I'm not saying that, COVID wasn't serious, but if some, higher fatality rate contagion comes along, people are going to be far more resistant when, in fact, they should be even more compliant. So let's just play a little clip here from China in Focus, okay?
The latest strain, known as Omicron, rarely attacks the lungs. But now, doctors across China have been reporting the white lung phenomenon again. Sometimes in as much as 20% of their patients. Some have reportedly died. At the same time, funeral homes across the country are overcrowded. These issues do not line up with the experiences other countries have had with Omicron.
So this is why they think that there's something else going on. Now, is it the wild version of the virus, the original version of the virus that's still circulating? Is it a new, more deadlier virus? Because what she didn't say is that there have been some accounts that up to 40% of people who've contracted the white lung version of this have actually died. So if that's true, and of course you can never really, in the early stages of anything, you can never really speculate too much, but we need to be vigilant with respect to this, because what is happening is almost an exact replay of what happened in 2020, even in terms of the timeline. Started in January, the media was in denial. Okay, anybody, including myself, who spoke out and said, hey, this might be a big thing, was being shot down. And then March came around, everybody flipped. The reverse was true. If you didn't think the sky was falling at that time, then you were called a denier or whatever it was at the time. So I have a feeling that the same thing is happening right now. Now, according to this medical professional, they suspect that this might actually be a different virus altogether that China is trying to cover up. Okay, now we got to play a few more clips. China is reopening. Talked a bit about that data point, so we know that whatever is there is going to spread. The thesis that they're putting forward in this email, the summary of it, is that China is trying to dilute the serious illness with this less serious Omicron case to try to cover it up. Now we're going to break it down. What exactly is this virus they're talking about? Well, it's interesting to say the least. Let's just watch a few more clips though, so we can provide a bit more context. And I really hope John Campbell or Chris Martenson makes a video about this, because I'm not really that good at trying to compile all this information, okay? Let's just skip ahead here. Okay, let's go right here.
What worries governments around the world is the lack of transparency of data from China. We speculate that governments of various countries are afraid that a new mutant strain with a relatively high fatality rate has appeared in mainland China. Once this strain crosses the border, it could be another global disaster. Because Japan's data can be found online, some Chinese in mainland China have conducted research and found that mainland passengers carry a new virus variant, CM2. It's already been detected, but it has never appeared in the official Chinese data. The Chinese government announced internally.
Let's watch one more clip from this actual video.
White lung is becoming a buzzword. White lung refers to the whitening of the lungs, which is one of the signs of a serious lung infection and was found in many of the new coronavirus patients in Wuhan in early 2020. Industry professionals believe that this outbreak includes not only the Omicron strain, but also a mutated Delta strain. But it may be more than that. As time passed, Chinese doctors were alarmed by the increasing number of people contracting the virus for a second time. Those who have become positive again face more serious consequences.
Okay.
This is a conversation.
So they go on to share a conversation between two people, one of them saying that, you know, when I got it the second time, it was worse because my immunity was compromised. Now, again, not an expert on this. As far as I know, though, the original concern with reinfection of the original COVID strain, whatever it was that if you get it a second time, your immune system might overreact. There's a term for it. It escapes me right now. Somebody will write it in the comments section below. But this happens because your immune system overreacts. Now they're saying that the immune system is practically, shot, and then you get reinfected within a couple weeks, and that's when it hits you hard. Regardless, it appears that something else is going on. Let's listen to one more clip before we carry on here.
The spreading speed of this virus can be described as mystical. In less than a week after the restrictions were lifted, no one works in the company. The streets are empty and everyone stays at home, which is completely beyond our understanding of the disease. Those who didn't wear masks were positive. Those who wore masks were also positive. Those who went out became positive. Those who stayed at home also got positive. Even the paralyzed elderly.
Okay, now, why that's important is because there's a theory circulating that perhaps the CCP wants people to get this virus as fast as possible. Now, I've speculated that, they either wanted to have complete lockdown, have complete control, or they just let it loose. They try to hit the peak as fast as possible, whether they exceed the curve or not, or they exceed their hospital's capacity to deal with the overwhelm or not. So there's a theory circulating that, and I'm not claiming to believe this at all, I'm just putting it out there, that maybe they've even spread it somehow. Because what she's saying is that people who stayed home, have been entirely locked in their homes, have still contracted this. Now, it could have circulated through the air system if you're in an apartment building. They're suggesting that maybe it's in the water supply. There's a variety of theories circulating. I think perhaps one of the most parsimonious explanations is that you had all those protests and the thing just spread like wildfire. But this doesn't explain the white lung phenomena, right? Now, this is where it gets interesting. Okay, so according to this individual, there was earlier, I believe it was in 2020, okay, Canadian scientists who have now gotten fired sent deadly viruses to Wuhan lab months before the RCMP was asked to investigate. Now, these viruses that they sent were Ebola and Henipa virus, and they were sent there for some sort of research. It was for the purpose of research anyways. It wasn't like some clandestine thing. It was, for the purpose of research. Nonetheless, they weren't supposed to do this. Now, as it turns out, there was a virus that emerged in 2021. And this is a kind of Henipa virus. And it's like the sister of a Henipa virus, from what I'm told by this medical health professional, that is now circulating there, okay? And it's not as fatal as the Henipa virus, which could have a fatality rate of up to 60%, which would map on well to the 40% of people who are dying with the white lung infection. It's concerning because this was sent to China by Canadian researchers in 2020, or maybe it was 2019, I think. I can't remember the exact date. It could have been in 2020. Anyways, so we know that the Wuhan lab was genetically manipulating deadly Nipah virus. Expert testifies at the Senate hearing. And that information is all available on the U.S. State Department's website. So this is U.S. government now. This is not just speculation. And these news sources are credible mainstream media news sources, okay? So we know that there was some sort of manipulation of this virus at the same time. So if there was a leak, was it just COVID that leaked? Or was there something else as well? Now here's where it gets into the realm of, okay, you gotta be kidding me. Maybe more than one thing leaked, and maybe something else was leaked in order to cover up something that was leaked that was more lethal. Because you remember when the whole thing broke out, I mean, China was locking people down. I mean, they were putting people in the backs of vans. They were building these makeshift prisons where you were literally behind bars if you were found to be infected with something. Communities were locking down. They were guarding the gates of their communities with weapons. I mean, it was Mad Max. People were getting welded into their homes. Why would you do that for something with as innocuous a kill rate as what we've now come to know as, SARS-CoV-2? Why would you do that for all that? Something serious, more serious, must have been occurring. Potentially. Again, this is speculation. But what it points towards is that right now, even Fox News admits that maybe something is going on that is trying to be covered up. The theory they're putting forth is that potentially China is trying to get as many people infected as fast as possible in order to dilute the fact that there's something more serious circulating, which is not beyond the realm of possibility. We must also understand that we're in the age of hybrid warfare. We're in World War III right now. I know a lot of people don't agree with that designation, but that's what I view it as. We're entering a multipolar world. The tensions between China, the United States, Russia, Ukraine, and NATO are as high as they've ever been, higher than ever before. So we also need to entertain the possibility that there is biowarfare going on in the world, and that this multipolarizing of the world is going to increase the potential of that, because we're entering an era where there is a battle for technological supremacy, because that's going to dictate who rules the world in the future. It's all going to come down to that, and a centerpiece of that is Taiwan. Okay, the Chinese could be making a move on Taiwan any time now. Another theory is that, well, the Chinese just want to get this over with before that window of opportunity for doing a land invasion of Taiwan, which is somewhere between March and April, because that's when the Taiwan Strait, the seas, are most settled and accommodating for such an exercise. They want to get it out of the way before that happens, and China is just trying to infect as many people as possible or open the floodgates so that they can get past this peak and hopefully reopen their economy in full and not have to deal with a war and COVID spiking at the exact same time. But there's been a seemingly lack of media attention being paid to this issue, which reminds me very much of what we've seen happening in early January 2020, where you were almost shunned for suggesting that this is a serious thing. I remember distinctly January, February 2020, maybe until the later half of February, everybody was downplaying this thing, right? Everybody thought it was just, it wasn't going to amount to much. It wasn't going to spread. You have it this week, you don't have it next week type thing. And sure enough, those same people flipped like a light switch. And if you didn't have your mask on after that, you were right next to Lucifer himself in terms of your ethics. So I think that something is going on. I mean, obviously, I can't say for sure, but I would hope that somebody who is more well-versed in presenting this type of, analyzing this type of research and presenting it. I'm from a psychological background, so I'm not from an epidemiological background. I can't break this down necessarily and connect all the dots. So I hope somebody can, and I hope you would provide your insights in the comment section below. I just want to make sure that there's nothing I missed here. Another thing to consider, though, is that, and I've always long since suspected, if this virus was so weak, why would China shoot itself in the foot economically? Because we know that there are negative health outcomes associated with, a bad economy, with the low standard of living that comes with recessionary times. So why would China shoot itself in the foot 3 years running and, cripple its economy and limit its output for 3 years over something like this, when they could just unleash it on the population, get it over with? You can't tell me that it was just, because we didn't want to be embarrassed by the international community. I don't think that, I think that they're more logical than that. And even when you look at the Chinese demographics, okay? So this is the Indian demographic. What you want, and this is an age tree, basically. So, people age 0 to 4, ideally, you would have the bulk of your population be younger, because you don't want a aging population, because of course the young people are the ones that pay the taxes, they're the ones that consume, they're the ones that stimulate economic growth. So if you have a population like this is a growing, developing population. This means that their economy is going to grow. However, with China, you have a situation in which the demographic spread is not very good for future prospects because you have less young people than you do old people. So you would think if the CCP was concerned about the future growth, that they would let the boomer remover run wild. Boomer remover, I'm talking about COVID, because it would take care of some of the old people, right? Sad to say, it's just what it is. Maybe they thought that that would be the case. Now, hopefully, because this is the same situation in Europe, in many developed nations. Japan is like wildly, there's way more old people than there are young people there. Hopefully, by the time we have to deal with these problems, there's robots to take care of the old people, and automation somehow, takes up the lack of human resources due to the fact that nobody's having kids anymore because everybody's just swiping and, living their best life, right? Let's not get into that. But because people aren't having as many children, the future means that future economic growth is under threat. So you would think that there would be incentive for China to want to thin the herd a little bit at the top of this pyramid. But they tried their best for 3 years to prevent anybody from dying, so it seems. But I think we can ascertain from the lack of transparency on the part of the Chinese government, which is so obvious, and it's kind of scary, the fact that we are not holding them to account in the way that we very well could. I mean, tensions are high between China and USA right now. We should be pulling no punches with respect to scrutinizing the numbers that are coming out of there. But all you're hearing is crickets. Now, I'm interested in hearing what your theory is, or if you have any other information that might corroborate, debunk, fact check, whatever you got, put it down in the comment section below. Let's try not to get too carried away with the conspiracy stuff, because we don't want this video put in the crosshairs. But I do think it's very important that you share this video, you get this information out there, so hopefully people in the know can pick it up and basically weigh whether or not the information I've presented is true or false, because I'd like to know. A part of preparedness is awareness, and that means being ahead of the mass media curve. The mobs of mass media, they come late. They're the ones that load up on toilet paper and are getting in fights at the grocery store for what remains. We don't want to be that. That's why I make videos like this in the first place, because it's important that we're ahead of the curve. And unfortunately, we're living in a age where the more information that's at our fingertips, the harder it is for us to discern what's what. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you enjoy the video. Canadian Prepper out.